Ladies and gentlemen, it's a beautiful day in the neighborhood, and the Italian government has awarded most of the seats, not all, but most. The center-right coalition has won 60% of the seats in the chamber so far. There's about 4.5% of the seats to go. They've won 59% of the seats in the Senate. There's still about 7 or 8% of those seats to go. Now, Italian elections are very messy and complicated. There's a huge number of parties. So there's many national parties. Then there's dozens of regional and local parties. It's like layers. You can keep pulling back the layers of Italian politics and finding more local parties. So take, for example, Sweden. They have 8 parties. This is a lot of parties to keep track of. But election after election, it's the same 8 parties, and each party only goes up a little bit or down a little bit from election. So Italy is completely different. Now, I promised whiteboard, and whiteboard I shall deliver. So this is just the proportional representation portion of the election. So 63% of the seats are awarded via proportional representation. 37% are awarded via single district winner take all. And you can see here that from the 2018 election, Five Star Movement has lost over half their support. Lega has lost almost half their support. Forza Italia continues their downtrend and has lost more support. But then Fratelli, the Brothers of Italy, have increased their support almost 6-fold. So this is nothing like a Swedish election. The 3 parties at the top are the largest parties of the center-right coalition. And then Partito Democratico is the main left-wing party. They basically stayed the same. And then their best performing ally was an alliance of multiple far left parties that got 3.6%. And then you got a new alliance of 2 centrist liberal parties, basically Macron style parties, that got 7.8%. Now, the key to the center-right coalition getting such a large majority is because they completely mopped the floor in the single district winner-take-all seats, which is 37%. So I'm going to try to explain how it came to be that the center-right coalition was able to dominate the winner-take-all portion so much. Now, first of all, what is Fratelli d'Italia, the Brothers of Italy, and where did they come from? The party was only created in 2012. Now, the logo is the tricolor flame, which they legally inherited from Alliance Nationale, which was a hardline nationalist conservative party. That party legally inherited the logo from Italian Social Movement, which was a political party founded in the late 40s after World War II. Now, the media is saying, oh, well, the origin of this party contains people who were ex-Italian fascist officials. Of course, in Germany, the CDU, the Social Democrats, the Free Democrats, and Die Linke, the former East German Communist Party, well, all of them had huge numbers of ex-Nazi party officials after World War II. But no one says that these parties are rooted in the Nazis because they had ex-Nazi party officials. It's only a party that the media doesn't like that gets this treatment. At any rate, here's how the current incarnation of Fratelli came to be. So for almost 50 years, the dominant political party in Italy was Christian democracy. This party was created while World War II was still going on. And they came in first place in the first post-war election in 46. They came in first place in every single election until 1992. Imagine being the first place party in every single election for almost 50 years. Now, there's a lot of other parties in Europe that have Christian in the name. And take like the CDU in Germany. Well, the word Christian doesn't really mean anything. But from everything I've read about Christian democracy, the Christian part was actually in the forefront. It was a serious pro-Catholic party. And it was conservative, but you could also be a left-wing Catholic and be a member. And so, to some degree, it was like Big Tent Catholic. Well, for most of this 50 years, the second largest party in Italy was the Italian Communist Party. That was their main opponent. So, essentially, it was Catholics who didn't like communists who were part of it. Now, the Italian social movement generally only got 4 or 5% of the vote, just like Fratelli only got 4.5% in the last election. They were generally an ally with Christian democracy because both parties were anti-communist. So they were allies under a banner of anti-communism. Well, after the 1992 election took place, there was a major event in Italy. Hundreds and hundreds of politicians and regulators and bureaucrats were either indicted for corruption or they resigned. It was this massive corruption scandal. Well, guess which party was at the center of this? The party that had been the dominant party for almost 50 years. And after the corruption scandal, in the next few local elections, Christian democracy had lost half their support. And people were forming splinter groups. And the party said, poof, we're gone. It dissolved. The biggest party for almost 50 years suddenly disappears from the scene. And then in comes billionaire media magnate Silvio Berlusconi. And so the 1994 election was really dramatic. The election we saw the other day was definitely the most dramatic election since then, maybe even more dramatic. But 1994 was also a big election, and it actually set the stage, in my opinion, for what we saw this year. So Silvio Berlusconi comes in, and he forms his own party called Forza Italia, Forward Italy, and he does something that was much different than his counterparts in Northern Europe. So at the time, you had something called the cordon sanitaire, which is still going strong in some countries, particularly Germany, with the Alternative for Deutschland party. It was most known in Belgium with Vlaams Belang, and essentially it's still going on in Belgium. But the media would say Party X is too conservative. No one is allowed to coalition with them. You can't network with them. If we even see you talking to their members, we're going to attack you. And of course, this went on with the Swedish Democrats in Sweden, even though they're not even right-wing. Berlusconi created this broad coalition, and it included two parties that were supposed to be these radical bad boy far-right parties. Lega Nord, which is now Lega, and Alliance Nationale. And he basically told the media, screw you. He didn't do what his counterparts in Northern Europe were doing. He wasn't a cuckold. And he made this coalition. The original coalition, which eventually becomes the center-right coalition, had this big long name. It was like Pillars of Good Governance and Pillars of Freedoms. And it was actually two different coalitions, like one for northern Italy and one for southern Italy. After the first election, they made it less complicated. It was just called House of Freedoms, and it was only one big coalition. But essentially, Silvio Berlusconi said, I'm not going to do this cordon sanitaire bullshit that you're doing everywhere else. And he made this broad coalition that included everything from so-called bad boy far-right parties to very moderate parties. And it worked. After a few elections, he tried to merge a bunch of the parties with Forza Italia. So for a while they had Party of Freedoms, which was a merger of Forza Italia with Alliance Nationale and some smaller parties, some of which were like splinter groups of the former Christian Democracy Party. Well, what happened was some of the parties that merged with them remained as factions and then eventually split off again. So Alliance Nationale, when they first merged with Forza Italia, they had a leader who was becoming unpopular with the membership. And what they did is they ended up splitting back off, but ditching their former leader. So they left their former leader that they didn't like in Forza Italia and created Fratelli d'Italia in 2012. And so that's how Alliance Nationale became Fratelli d'Italia. But from all my personal research, everything I can tell, the whole reason the center-right coalition is mopping the floor with the left in the single district winner-take-all seats is because they have such a broad spectrum, and it all goes back to Silvio Berlusconi not being a cuckold in the 90s like his counterparts all over Northern Europe and Scandinavia. All right, thanks for watching this video. Click the like button, post a comment below, tell me what you think about this. And YouTube could delete this channel at any time, as they have done with thousands of other conservative channels. So subscribe to my backup channels on BitChute and Odyssey. And also you can support me on Subscribestar and Patreon. And if you think the video quality of this video is bad, it's because my Canon camera fell and broke, and I'm using an old camera I dug out of the garage. So you can help me get a new Canon by supporting me on those platforms. All right, click the subscribe button. New video every few days.